The morning sun cast long shadows across the grand estate as Margaret Davies hurried through the corridors of Clarence House. She had worked as a cleaning lady for the royal household for nearly 15 years, and nothing much surprised her anymore. Royal families, she had learned, were just like any other family behind closed doors, with their own secrets, arguments, and private moments. But today felt different. There was tension in the air that she couldn't quite explain. The staff whispered, in hushed tones, and even the usually cheerful kitchen workers seemed worried about something. Margaret went about her duties as usual, dusting furniture and organizing papers when she noticed something unusual in the Duchess of Cornwall's private study. Camilla had always been particular about her personal correspondence. She kept her letters and documents neatly organized in specific drawers, and Margaret knew exactly where everything belonged. However, this morning, she found several letters scattered on the floor near the ornate mahogany desk. They must have fallen from an overstuffed drawer that had been opened hastily. As Margaret bent down to collect the papers, she couldn't help but notice the elegant handwriting on the cream-colored stationery. The letters were addressed to someone, named "My Dearest Friend," and signed simply with C. What caught her attention wasn't just the intimate tone of the writing, but the dates on the letters. They spanned several years, some going back to the early days of Charles and Camilla's marriage. Margaret knew she shouldn't read personal correspondence, but something about these letters felt significant. The paper was expensive, the kind used for important documents, and there were official-looking seals on some of the envelopes. As she gathered them up, one letter fell open, revealing words that made her heart skip a beat. The letter spoke about difficult decisions ahead and protecting what matters most. There were references to the family's reputation and concerns about public perception. Margaret quickly closed the letter and placed it back with the others, but her mind was racing. These weren't ordinary personal letters between friends. They seemed to contain information about royal family matters that the public had never heard about. Over the next few days, Margaret found herself paying closer attention to the study. She noticed that Camilla had been spending more time there than usual, often with the door closed. Phone conversations seemed more frequent and more serious. The Duchess appeared stressed, something Margaret had rarely observed in all her years of service. The cleaning lady also noticed that certain important visitors had been coming to see Camilla privately. These weren't the usual social calls or official royal business meetings. The guests arrived quietly, often using side entrances, and their meetings lasted for hours. Margaret recognized some faces from newspapers. They were journalists, publishers, and what appeared to be legal advisors. One afternoon, while cleaning the study, Margaret discovered that the drawer containing the letters was now locked with a small brass key. This was unusual because Camilla had never locked any of her desk drawers before. The change suggested that the contents had become more sensitive or valuable than before. Margaret began to piece together what she was observing. The secret meetings, the locked drawer, the stressed behavior, and the formal tone of those letters all pointed to something significant happening behind the scenes. She remembered hearing whispered conversations among other staff members about preparations and contingency plans, though no one seemed to know exactly what was being planned. The breakthrough came when Margaret was asked to help prepare the study for a particularly important meeting. While arranging chairs and ensuring everything was perfect, she overheard Camilla speaking on the phone. The conversation was brief but revealing. Camilla mentioned the correspondence and said something about ensuring the right narrative if certain information ever became public. After the phone call ended, Margaret watched as Camilla carefully removed several letters from the locked drawer. She held them for a long moment as if weighing a difficult decision, before placing them in a different, more secure location. The way Camilla handled these documents suggested they contained information that could have serious consequences if they were ever made public. That evening, Margaret couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed. Throughout her years of service, she had learned to keep royal family secrets and had never gossiped about private matters. But this felt different. These letters seemed to contain information that went beyond personal family issues. They appeared to involve matters that could affect the monarchy itself. The more Margaret thought about it, the more she realized she might have stumbled upon something historically significant. The careful way Camilla was handling these letters, the secret meetings with media professionals and legal experts, and the overall atmosphere of preparation suggested that these documents might contain revelations that could change how people viewed the royal family. Margaret knew she was in a delicate position. Her job depended on discretion and loyalty, but she also felt a responsibility to understand what was happening around her. The letters clearly contained sensitive information, and the way they were being managed suggested that their contents might eventually become public knowledge. As she went about her duties over the following days, Margaret paid careful attention to any clues that might help her understand the full scope of what was contained in those mysterious letters. She noticed that Camilla had begun keeping a detailed schedule of meetings and phone calls, something she had never done before. The Duchess also seemed to be consulting frequently with Prince Charles, though their conversations always stopped abruptly when staff members entered the room. The atmosphere in the household continued to feel charged with anticipation and anxiety. Margaret sensed that something important was about to happen, something that would involve those carefully guarded letters and the secrets they contained. She realized she might be witnessing the beginning of events that would eventually capture the attention of the entire world. What Margaret didn't know yet was that she had discovered the first evidence of a correspondence that would soon shake the very foundations of the British monarchy and change how the public viewed the royal family forever. Sarah Mitchell had built her reputation as one of London's most tenacious investigative journalists through years of careful research and patient detective work. When she received an anonymous phone call suggesting that there might be significant correspondence involving the Duchess of Cornwall, she initially dismissed it as another conspiracy theory from someone seeking attention. However, the caller provided specific details that made Sarah reconsider. They mentioned exact dates, locations of meetings, and names of people who had visited Clarence House during particular time periods. The level of detail suggested that the caller had direct access to information that wouldn't be available to ordinary members of the public. Sarah decided to conduct some preliminary research. She began by examining public records of royal engagements and comparing them with the information provided by the anonymous caller. To her surprise, many of the details checked out. There were indeed gaps in the official schedules that corresponded with the times mentioned in the phone call. Her investigation led her to start monitoring the activities around Clarence House more closely. Using her network of contacts within various media organizations and government offices, Sarah began gathering information about unusual meetings and communications involving the Duchess of Cornwall. Within a few weeks, Sarah discovered that several prominent figures in media, law, and public relations had been quietly consulting with representatives of the royal household. These consultations were not part of any publicly announced initiatives or official royal business. They appeared to be private arrangements that were deliberately kept away from public attention. The pattern of these meetings suggested that someone was preparing for a significant public relations challenge. Sarah had seen similar patterns before, when major corporations or political figures were preparing to address potential scandals or sensitive revelations. The involvement of legal experts alongside media professionals indicated that the matter involved both potential legal implications and public perception management. Sarah's breakthrough came when she managed to identify one of the legal advisors who had been meeting with Camilla's representatives. Through careful research, she learned that this particular lawyer specialized in media law and privacy issues, specifically dealing with cases involving personal correspondence and freedom of information matters. This discovery led Sarah to focus her investigation on the possibility that there might be letters or documents that contained sensitive information. She began researching historical precedents of royal correspondence that had caused public controversies, looking for patterns that might help her understand what kind of information could be involved in the current situation. Her research revealed that throughout British royal history, personal letters and private communications had occasionally become public and caused significant embarrassment or political complications for the monarchy. In some cases, these revelations had led to changes in public opinion and even influenced political decisions. Sarah realized that if her suspicions were correct, she might be investigating a story that could have major implications for the royal family's reputation and public standing. She decided to approach the investigation with extreme caution, knowing that any mistakes could have serious consequences for her career and potentially for the people involved. The journalist began reaching out to her most trusted sources within various circles that might have knowledge of royal family matters. She spoke with former royal staff members, media professionals who had worked on royal coverage, and legal experts who had dealt with similar cases in the past. Through these conversations, Sarah began to piece together a picture of increasing concern within royal circles about potential revelations. Several of her sources mentioned that there had been unusual activity regarding document security and media strategy planning, though no one had specific details about what was driving these concerns. One particularly valuable source was a former royal communications expert who had worked with the family during previous crises. This person confirmed that the type of meetings and consultations Sarah had identified were consistent with preparations for managing a significant public relations challenge involving sensitive personal information. The source also provided Sarah with insight into how the royal family typically handled situations involving potentially damaging personal correspondence. They explained that such matters were usually addressed through a combination of legal action to prevent publication, media strategy to control the narrative, and sometimes preemptive disclosure to minimize damage. Based on this information, Sarah concluded that there were likely letters or documents involving Camilla that contained information the royal family considered potentially damaging if made public. The extensive preparations suggested that the content of these documents was significant enough to warrant major concern about their potential impact. Sarah decided to take her investigation to the next level by attempting to identify the specific nature of the correspondence. She began researching Camilla's relationships and communications patterns, looking for clues about who might have been exchanging letters with her and what topics they might have discussed. Her research revealed that Camilla had maintained correspondence with a wide network of friends, advisors, and associates throughout her relationship with Prince Charles. Some of these relationships dated back many years and involved people who had been present during various significant events in Charles and Camilla's relationship. The journalist also discovered that several of Camilla's long-term correspondence had connections to media organizations, political figures, and social circles that could potentially have access to sensitive information about royal family matters. This suggested that any letters exchanged with these individuals might contain discussions of topics that went beyond personal matters. As Sarah continued her investigation, she began to understand that the situation was more complex than she had initially realized. The correspondence appeared to involve not just personal matters but potentially issues related to royal family decision-making, public relations strategies, and perhaps even matters of constitutional significance. The more Sarah learned, the more she realized she was dealing with a story that could have far-reaching implications. The careful preparations being made by royal representatives suggested that the content of these letters was considered highly sensitive and potentially damaging to the monarchy's reputation. Sarah knew she was approaching a critical point in her investigation. She had gathered enough evidence to confirm that there was indeed significant correspondence involving Camilla that was causing major concern within royal circles. The next step would be to try to determine the specific content of these letters and assess their potential impact on the royal family and the monarchy as an institution. The breakthrough in Sarah Mitchell's investigation came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, a respected historian who had been researching royal correspondence for an academic project, contacted Sarah after reading one of her preliminary articles about unusual activity within royal circles. Dr. Hartwell explained that she had been granted limited access to certain historical royal documents as part of her research into 20th century monarchy communications. While reviewing these materials, she had noticed references to more recent correspondence that seemed to be connected to the current concerns Sarah was investigating. The historian had discovered that some of Camilla's letters had been deposited in royal archives as part of routine documentation procedures, but they had been classified with unusual security restrictions. This suggested that their content was considered particularly sensitive, even by royal family standards. Through her academic connections, Dr. Hartwell had managed to learn some general details about the nature of these letters. They appeared to span a period from the early 2000s through recent years, and involved correspondence with several different recipients. The letters contained discussions that went far beyond typical personal communication between friends. Sarah realized that Dr. Hartwell's academic access might provide the key to understanding what was actually contained in Camilla's correspondence. After several careful conversations, the historian agreed to share some of the information she had uncovered, while maintaining strict confidentiality about specific sources and methods. What Dr. Hartwell revealed was startling. The letters contained detailed discussions about royal family decision-making processes, including conversations about public relations strategies, media management, and even considerations about the line of succession. Camilla had apparently been much more involved in behind-the-scenes royal operations than had ever been publicly acknowledged. One particularly significant aspect of the correspondence involved discussions about how to handle various royal family crises and controversies. The letters showed that Camilla had been providing advice and strategic input on matters ranging from minor public relations challenges to major constitutional questions. The correspondence also revealed conversations about individual members of the royal family, including frank assessments of their public performance, personal challenges, and suitability for various royal duties. These discussions included surprisingly candid evaluations of family members' strengths and weaknesses in their public roles. Perhaps most significantly, the letters contained discussions about the future of the monarchy itself. Camilla had apparently been involved in conversations about modernizing royal traditions, adapting to changing public expectations, and ensuring the institution's continued relevance in contemporary British society. Dr. Hartwell also discovered that some of the correspondence included discussions about specific media strategies and public messaging campaigns. The letters showed detailed planning about how to present certain royal family decisions and events to the public in ways that would maximize positive reception and minimize potential criticism. The historian found evidence that Camilla had been consulting with various experts and advisors about constitutional matters, legal implications of royal actions, and historical precedents for addressing modern challenges facing the monarchy. This suggested a level of involvement in royal governance that had never been publicly acknowledged. One of the most revealing aspects of the correspondence was its discussion of relationships with political figures and government officials. The letters showed that Camilla had been involved in conversations about royal family interactions with elected officials and civil servants, sometimes offering opinions about political developments and their implications for the monarchy. The letters also contained discussions about financial matters related to royal operations, including considerations about public funding, private resources, and the economic aspects of various royal initiatives. These conversations showed a detailed understanding of the financial complexities involved in maintaining the modern monarchy. Sarah realized that the significance of these revelations extended far beyond personal gossip or family drama. The correspondence painted a picture of Camilla as a much more influential figure in royal decision-making than anyone had previously understood. It showed her actively participating in strategic planning and governance discussions that affected the entire institution of the monarchy. The journalist also understood why the royal family would be concerned about these letters becoming public. They revealed the inner workings of royal decision-making in ways that could fundamentally change public understanding of how the monarchy actually operates behind the scenes. Dr. Hartwell explained that the letters also contained discussions about specific individuals outside the royal family, including media figures, political leaders, and business associates. Some of these discussions included personal assessments and strategic considerations about relationships that could be politically or personally sensitive if made public. The correspondence showed that Camilla had been maintaining communication networks that extended far beyond her official royal duties. She had been exchanging information and opinions with people across various sectors of British society, creating what amounted to an informal intelligence and influence network. One particularly significant thread in the correspondence involved discussions about public opinion research and polling data related to royal family members and their activities. The letters showed detailed analysis of public sentiment and strategic planning based on this information. The letters also revealed conversations about international relationships and diplomatic considerations. Camilla had apparently been involved in discussions about royal family interactions with foreign dignitaries and the diplomatic implications of various royal activities. Sarah began to understand that these letters represented a comprehensive record of high-level strategic thinking about the monarchy's role in modern Britain. They showed detailed planning and analysis that went far beyond what most people would expect from personal correspondence. The most striking aspect of the revelations was how they demonstrated Camilla's evolution from a private individual to what appeared to be a key strategic advisor within the royal establishment. The letters tracked her increasing involvement in and influence over royal decision-making processes. Dr. Hartwell warned Sarah that the full implications of these revelations would likely extend beyond immediate public interest. The correspondence appeared to document decision-making processes and strategic considerations that could have constitutional significance if examined by legal and political experts. Sarah realized she now faced a crucial decision about how to proceed with this information. The correspondence clearly contained material that would be of enormous public interest, but it also raised questions about privacy, constitutional propriety, and the potential consequences of making such sensitive information public. The first sign that the royal establishment had become aware of Sarah Mitchell's investigation came through an unexpected phone call from Sir James Crawford, the palace's most senior communications advisor. His tone was carefully measured, but the underlying message was unmistakable. The palace knew what Sarah was researching, and they wanted to discuss the matter before any information became public. Sir James requested a meeting at a neutral location, suggesting a private club in central London where such sensitive conversations could take place without attracting attention. Sarah agreed, understanding that this meeting would likely determine how the entire situation would unfold. She spent considerable time preparing for what she knew would be a complex negotiation involving legal, ethical, and practical considerations. When they met, Sir James was accompanied by two other individuals, Lady Catherine Morrison, who served as the palace's chief legal counsel, and David Richardson, a veteran media relations expert who had handled previous royal crises. Their presence indicated that the palace was taking Sarah's investigation very seriously and was prepared to deploy significant resources to address the situation. Sir James opened the conversation by acknowledging that the palace was aware of Sarah's research into certain correspondence involving the Duchess of Cornwall. He emphasized that any such letters would be considered private personal communication, protected by both legal privacy rights and long-standing conventions about royal family confidentiality. Lady Catherine explained the legal framework surrounding royal correspondence, pointing out that such materials were protected under multiple statutes covering privacy, official secrets, and crown prerogatives. She made it clear that any attempt to publish such correspondence without authorization would likely result in immediate legal action to prevent publication and seek damages. However, David Richardson took a different approach, focusing on the potential consequences of making such correspondence public. He explained that releasing personal letters without context could create misleading impressions and potentially damage relationships between the royal family and various individuals and institutions mentioned in the correspondence. Sarah listened carefully to these arguments while making her own position clear. She emphasized her commitment to responsible journalism and her understanding of the need to balance public interest with personal privacy. However, she also stressed that if the correspondence contained information relevant to public understanding of royal family operations, there might be legitimate reasons for the public to have access to that information. The meeting continued for several hours, with each side carefully exploring the boundaries of their respective positions. Sir James eventually acknowledged that the palace understood Sarah's professional obligations as a journalist, but he emphasized the potential for serious harm if sensitive correspondence were published without proper consideration of all the implications. Lady Catherine presented Sarah with a detailed legal analysis of the potential consequences of publishing royal correspondence without authorization. The analysis covered not only immediate legal action, but also potential long-term implications for media freedom and the relationship between the press and royal institutions. During their discussion, Sarah gained valuable insights into how seriously the palace viewed the potential publication of Camilla's letters. The level of senior personnel involved in addressing her investigation suggested that the correspondence contained information that the royal establishment considered extremely sensitive. Sir James eventually made a proposal that surprised Sarah. Rather than simply demanding that she abandon her investigation, he suggested that the palace might be willing to provide some authorized information about the general topics covered in the correspondence, in exchange for agreement not to publish the actual letters without permission. This proposal indicated that the palace recognized the legitimate public interest in understanding more about royal family operations, while still protecting the specific details contained in private correspondence. It suggested a possible compromise that might serve both Sarah's journalistic purposes and the palace's privacy concerns. David Richardson explained that such an arrangement had been used successfully in previous situations involving sensitive, royal family information. He cited examples where authorized disclosure of general information had satisfied public curiosity, while protecting specific details that might cause harm if published. However, Sarah realized that accepting such an arrangement would significantly limit her ability to provide complete information to the public. She would be dependent on the palace's willingness to provide accurate and comprehensive summaries of the correspondence, without being able to verify the completeness or accuracy of that information. The meeting concluded with an agreement to continue discussions while both sides considered their options. Sir James emphasized that the palace hoped to reach a mutually acceptable resolution that would protect both legitimate public interests and necessary privacy considerations. After the meeting, Sarah consulted with her editor and legal advisors about the palace's proposals. They helped her understand that she was now in a complex negotiation that would require careful balance between journalistic principles and practical considerations. Sarah, quote, "S legal team," explained that while the palace's threats of legal action were credible, there were also strong arguments for public interest that might support publication of at least some aspects of the correspondence. They advised her to continue gathering information while exploring possible compromise arrangements with the palace. Over the following days, Sarah received additional communications from palace representatives indicating their continued interest in reaching a negotiated settlement. These communications suggested that the palace was genuinely concerned about the potential impact of publication and was willing to make significant efforts to prevent it. The ongoing negotiations revealed the palace's sophisticated approach to managing sensitive information. Rather than simply relying on legal threats, they were offering various forms of cooperation and alternative disclosure that might satisfy public interest without compromising privacy. Sarah began to understand that she was dealing with a well-established system for managing potential royal family scandals. The palace had extensive experience in balancing public curiosity with institutional protection, and they had developed effective strategies for addressing situations like hers. The complexity of the situation was further complicated by the involvement of other parties mentioned in the correspondence. Palace representatives indicated that publication of the letters could affect not only royal family members but also private individuals who had communicated with Camilla in confidence. Sarah realized that her decision about how to proceed would have implications that extended far beyond her immediate story. The precedent she set could influence how future investigations of royal correspondence would be handled, and could affect the ongoing relationship between the media and royal institutions. As negotiations continued, Sarah found herself at the center of a complex web of legal, ethical, and practical considerations that would ultimately determine not only the fate of her investigation, but also potentially influence broader questions about transparency, privacy, and public accountability. In modern monarchy, the turning point in Sarah Mitchell's investigation came from an entirely unexpected direction. While she continued her careful negotiations with palace representatives, a separate development forced everyone's hand. Margaret Davies, the cleaning lady who had first discovered the scattered letters, decided she could no longer remain silent about what she had witnessed. Margaret had been struggling with her conscience for weeks, torn between her loyalty to her employers and her growing belief that the public had a right to know about the significant correspondence she had observed. After consulting with her family and a trusted friend who had experience with media matters, she made the difficult decision to contact Sarah directly. The meeting between Margaret and Sarah took place in a quiet cafe far from central London, away from any possible royal family surveillance. Margaret was nervous but determined as she recounted her experiences over the past several months. She provided Sarah with detailed descriptions of the letters she had seen, the unusual security measures that had been implemented, and the pattern of secret meetings she had observed. Most importantly, Margaret had managed to photograph several pages of correspondence before the enhanced security measures were put in place. While she hadn't been able to capture complete letters, the images she had taken provided concrete evidence of the sensitive nature of the communications and offered glimpses of their actual content. The photographs showed portions of letters, discussing specific royal family members by name, references to managing public perception of various events, and mentions of contingency planning for potential future scenarios. While the images didn't reveal complete conversations, they provided enough detail to confirm many of the suspicions Sarah had developed during her investigation. Margaret also provided Sarah with information about the specific individuals who had been meeting secretly with Camilla. She had carefully noted dates, times, and identifying details about visitors, creating what amounted to a comprehensive log of unusual activity surrounding the correspondence. Armed with this concrete evidence, Sarah realized that the nature of her negotiations with the palace had fundamentally changed. She was no longer dealing with speculation and indirect sources, but with documented proof of the correspondence and its sensitive nature. Sarah decided to confront the palace representatives with her new evidence during their next scheduled meeting. When she presented the photographs and Margaret's detailed testimony, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. Sir James Crawford's carefully controlled demeanor cracked, and Lady Catherine Morrison quickly huddled with her colleagues to discuss the implications. The palace team requested an immediate recess to consult with their superiors. When they returned, several hours later, their approach had completely changed. Instead of continuing to deny the existence of sensitive correspondence, they acknowledged the situation and began discussing damage control strategies. Sir James explained that the palace was now prepared to make a significant authorized disclosure about the correspondence in hopes of controlling how the information would be presented to the public. They offered Sarah exclusive access to a carefully prepared summary of the letter's contents, along with official palace commentary providing context and explanation. However, Sarah realized that accepting this offer would mean agreeing to present only the palace's version of events, without the ability to provide independent analysis or contrary perspectives. She decided to decline the offer and proceed with her own investigation and publication plans. The palace's response was swift and comprehensive. Within hours of Sarah's decision, royal legal representatives filed multiple court applications, seeking injunctions to prevent publication of any material related to the correspondence. They also initiated privacy and copyright claims, arguing that publication would violate numerous legal protections. Simultaneously, the palace launched a preemptive public relations campaign. They released carefully worded statements acknowledging that the Duchess of Cornwall maintained correspondence with various individuals on matters related to her royal duties, but emphasizing that such communications were private and taken out of context could create misleading impressions. Sarah and her legal team found themselves in a complex legal battle that attracted attention from media organizations across the country. Press freedom advocates argued that the case represented an important test of the public's right to understand how royal institutions actually operate, while privacy advocates emphasized the importance of protecting personal correspondence from unauthorized disclosure. The court proceedings revealed additional details about the correspondence that neither Sarah nor the palace had intended to make public. Legal arguments necessarily involved discussing the general nature of the letter's contents, providing the public with more information about their significance than anyone had previously disclosed. During the legal proceedings, it became clear that the correspondence involved not just personal matters but also discussions of constitutional significance. The letters apparently contained conversations about the role of the monarchy in modern British society, relationships with elected government officials, and strategic planning for various scenarios affecting the royal family. The case attracted international attention as media organizations worldwide recognized its implications for press freedom and royal transparency. Legal experts from various countries provided commentary on the balance between institutional privacy and public accountability in constitutional monarchies. As the legal battle continued, additional evidence emerged about the scope and significance of Camilla's correspondence network. Court documents revealed that she had been in communication with individuals across various sectors of British society, creating what appeared to be an extensive informal intelligence and influence system. The public reaction was intense and divided. Some people supported the palace's efforts to maintain privacy and argued that personal correspondence should remain confidential regardless of who wrote it. Others contended that communications involving royal family decision-making should be subject to public scrutiny, especially if they affected governance or public policy. Political figures found themselves drawn into the controversy as questions arose about the constitutional implications of unelected royal family members participating in strategic planning that might affect elected government operations. Parliamentary questions were raised about the appropriate boundaries between royal institutions and democratic governance. The media coverage of the legal proceedings provided the public with more information about royal family operations than had ever been available before, even without full publication of the actual letters. The court arguments necessarily revealed significant details about the correspondence's content and significance. As the case progressed through the court system, it became clear that the outcome would have far-reaching implications beyond the immediate question of publication rights. The precedents established could affect future royal transparency, media access to information about constitutional institutions, and the balance between privacy and accountability in public life. Sarah realized that her investigation had evolved far beyond anything she had initially anticipated. What had begun as curiosity about unusual royal family activity had become a major constitutional and legal controversy, with implications for fundamental principles of democratic governance and institutional accountability. The legal battle over Camilla's correspondence reached its conclusion after months of complex court proceedings that had captivated public attention across Britain and beyond. The final ruling represented a careful balance between press freedom and privacy rights, allowing publication of certain aspects of the letters while protecting specific personal details and individual privacy. The court's decision permitted Sarah Mitchell to publish a comprehensive analysis of the correspondence's general content and significance, while requiring her to redact specific names, personal details, and information that could harm individuals not directly involved in royal duties. The ruling established important precedents for future cases involving royal transparency and media access. When Sarah's article finally appeared, it created immediate and lasting changes in public understanding of how the modern monarchy actually operates. The revelations showed that Camilla had been far more involved in royal strategic planning and decision-making than anyone had previously understood, effectively serving as an unofficial advisor and coordinator for various royal family activities. The published information revealed a sophisticated network of communications through which Camilla had been coordinating responses to various challenges facing the royal family. The correspondence showed detailed planning for managing public relations crises, strategic thinking about the monarchy's future role, and extensive consultation with experts across multiple fields. Public reaction was swift and polarized. Supporters of the royal family argued that the revelations showed prudent planning and responsible preparation for the challenges facing a modern constitutional monarchy. They praised Camilla for taking an active role in protecting the institution and ensuring its continued effectiveness. Critics, however, argued that the correspondence revealed an inappropriate level of behind-the-scenes influence by someone who was not officially part of the constitutional framework. They questioned whether unelected royal family members should be involved in strategic planning that might affect democratic governance and public policy. The political implications became immediately apparent as members of Parliament began asking questions about the constitutional propriety of the activities revealed in the correspondence. Some MPs called for formal inquiries into the extent of royal family involvement in matters that might traditionally be considered the province of elected officials. The Prime Minister found himself in the delicate position of having to address concerns about royal family activities while maintaining the traditional respect for constitutional monarchy. His statements emphasized the importance of the monarchy's continued evolution and adaptation to contemporary circumstances, while avoiding direct criticism of specific individuals or actions. For Camilla herself, the revelations marked a significant transformation in her public role and recognition. The correspondence showed her evolution from a private individual to a key strategic thinker within the royal establishment. While this brought increased respect for her contributions, it also subjected her to greater scrutiny and higher expectations for her future activities. The royal family's response to the revelations was carefully measured and strategically planned. Rather than denying or minimizing the significance of the correspondence, they chose to present it as evidence of their commitment to responsible modernization of the monarchy and thoughtful preparation for future challenges. Prince Charles addressed the situation directly in a rare public statement, acknowledging Camilla's contributions to royal family planning and expressing pride in her dedication to the institution. His statement emphasized that such strategic thinking was necessary for the monarchy to remain relevant and effective in contemporary society. The international reaction was equally significant, as constitutional monarchies around the world examined the implications of the revelations for their own operations. Royal families in other countries began reviewing their own communication practices and strategic planning procedures in light of the British experience. Media organizations worldwide recognized the case as a landmark moment in the relationship between press freedom and royal transparency. The precedents established influenced how journalists approached royal coverage and how royal institutions managed their communications and privacy protection. Academic experts in constitutional law and political science began extensive analysis of the revealed correspondence, leading to new scholarship about the role of constitutional monarchy in modern democratic societies. Universities developed case studies based on the situation, examining the balance between traditional royal prerogatives and contemporary accountability expectations. For Margaret Davies, the cleaning lady whose courage had made the revelations possible, the experience was life-changing. While she faced initial criticism from some quarters for violating her employer's privacy, she ultimately received widespread recognition for her role in promoting transparency and public understanding of important institutional matters. Margaret's decision to speak out inspired other royal staff members to come forward with their own observations about royal family operations, leading to a broader understanding of how the monarchy actually functions behind the scenes. Her example demonstrated the importance of individual conscience in promoting institutional accountability. Sarah Mitchell's career was significantly enhanced by her handling of the investigation and the complex legal and ethical challenges it presented. Her careful balance of journalistic responsibility with respect for legitimate privacy concerns became a model for other reporters covering sensitive institutional matters. The long-term consequences of the revelations continued to unfold over subsequent months and years. The royal family implemented new transparency measures, including regular reports on their strategic planning activities and more open communication about their decision-making processes. Parliament eventually established new guidelines for royal family involvement in matters that might affect democratic governance, creating clearer boundaries between traditional royal prerogatives and areas that should remain within the exclusive province of elected officials. The case also led to broader public discussion about the role of constitutional monarchy in contemporary society. Citizens became more engaged in conversations about how traditional institutions should adapt to modern expectations while preserving their historical significance and constitutional functions. Educational institutions began teaching the case as an example of how democratic societies balance respect for traditional institutions with demands for transparency and accountability. The situation became a standard reference point for discussions about press freedom, privacy rights, and institutional responsibility. Years later, the revelation of Camilla's correspondence was recognized as a watershed moment that fundamentally changed the relationship between the British monarchy and the public. Historians would later identify this period as marking the beginning of a new era of royal transparency and public engagement with constitutional institutions. The correspondence revelations had forced the monarchy to confront questions about its role that had been avoided for generations. The letter showed that royal family members were already grappling with these issues privately, engaging in sophisticated analysis of their position in modern society, and planning for various future scenarios. The transparency that resulted from The revelations ultimately strengthened, rather than weakened, the monarchy's position. By demonstrating that royal family members were thoughtfully considering their responsibilities and actively working to ensure the institution's continued relevance, the correspondence helped build public confidence in their commitment to effective service. Camilla's role evolved significantly following the revelations. Rather than retreating from public view, she embraced her newly recognized position as a strategic thinker within the royal family. Her subsequent public appearances and statements reflected the depth of understanding and careful analysis that had been revealed in her private correspondence. The legal precedents established during the court case continued to influence media coverage of royal and government activities for years to come. The careful balance struck between transparency and privacy became a model for handling similar situations in other democratic societies. With constitutional monarchies. Educational programs were developed to help the public better understand the complex role of constitutional monarchy in modern democratic governance. These programs use the correspondence case as a practical example of how traditional institutions adapt to contemporary challenges while maintaining their essential functions. The case also influenced international discussions about royal transparency and accountability. Constitutional monarchies in other countries studied the British experience and implemented their own reforms to improve public understanding of royal activities while protecting legitimate privacy interests. For the individuals directly involved, the experience created lasting changes in their lives and careers. Sarah Mitchell became a recognized expert in investigative journalism involving public institutions, while Margaret Davies was honored for her courage in promoting institutional accountability. The correspondence itself, while never fully published, continued to serve as a valuable historical record for researchers studying the evolution of the British monarchy. Scholars were granted limited access to the materials for academic purposes, contributing to a deeper understanding of how constitutional institutions adapt to changing circumstances. The long-term impact of the revelations extended far beyond the immediate controversy. They catalyzed a broader transformation in how the public understood and engaged with traditional institutions, creating expectations for greater transparency and accountability that influenced government operations at all levels. The case demonstrated that even in the digital age, traditional forms of communication like personal letters could have profound implications for public understanding of institutional operations. It highlighted the continued importance of careful documentation and the potential consequences of private communications in public roles. Ultimately, the revelation of Camilla's secret correspondence became a defining moment in the modern history of the British monarchy, marking the transition from an era of institutional opacity to one of greater openness and public engagement. The foundations of the throne, rather than being shaken, were ultimately strengthened through the process of examination and reform that followed.